Do you know this, guys? You probably do, right? So today we're gonna be talking about the video that Max, released with his friends, talking about the top 10 fighting games of all time. They did it, based on their taste and what they like, and I'm gonna do the same and maybe change some stuff, based on my own liking. So let's get into it. If you enjoy fighting game videos though, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing, and let's get started. So the first and most relevant thing, this is the actual list, okay? These are the top 10 fighting games of all time, according to Max and his friends. Do we agree with this? Maybe. We're not gonna change, we're not gonna do the list completely and change the nominees, just a little, because I don't wanna make a 2-hour video. So let's see what we think about what are the top 10 fighting games of all time. When it comes to number 10, I have a tie on my heart. The first game would be Dragon Ball FighterZ. To me, Dragon Ball FighterZ deserves to be at the top 10. Because this game does not, get the credit that it deserves. First, this game kind of saved tag fighting games. After the fiasco that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was, this game kind of saved the tag genre, dude. Not only because of the huge success that it had, also because people didn't want to develop tag fighting games after what happened with the last Marvel vs. Capcom. They just want to ignore that and do 1v1s. And tag fighting games are a part of the history of fighting games. They are a huge section of what made fighting games big in both cultural, terms and on gameplay and development terms, or development design and philosophy. So to me, FighterZ deserves to be at the top 10 only because of that. And to that, you can add all of the other things. Like, this game is great up to this day. Like, it had great gameplay, great roster, super, huge IP with Dragon Ball. Like, to me, this game has, the power in which you can discuss that it deserves to be on the top 10. And the other game for the 10 spot, for the tie, to me, is Street Fighter Alpha 2. They actually, the guys, Max and his friends, didn't put this at top 10, which just surprises me. Like, Alpha 2 was such a huge game. It is basically the better Street Fighter 2 when it comes to pure gameplay and visuals, and like, this game is just legendary. People kind of forget how big the Alpha series was and how much it kept, Street Fighter afloat with, the power of being the biggest franchise. So Alpha 2 deserves some respect. So I'm gonna put a tie on this, and we're gonna say that the number 10 spot is for Dragon Ball FighterZ and also Street Fighter Alpha 2. Now for number 9, we have MK9. So I'm not the biggest MK guy. I do love MK characters. I find them incredibly cool. But MK9 saved this franchise, and I gotta respect that. I gotta put credit on that. MK9 just saved the Mortal Kombat franchise, which is the franchise that you could argue is the second biggest one. To me, Mortal Kombat is the biggest fighting game after Street Fighter. And you could even say that it is the first one. If you only think, around how famous they are and how much people play it and buy it, like, Mortal Kombat always has incredible success. And MK9 saved this franchise, and it was actually a pretty good game. So we gotta put some respect on that and put this in number 9. To me, it's not going to be, higher on the list because I'm not the biggest MK guy. And why is that? Because of the gameplay. Mortal Kombat always has like some problems when it comes to gameplay. There's always some wonky stuff going on. There has never been an MK game that is actually a peak in terms of gameplay when you compare it to other games. Then at number 8, we have Killer Instinct 2013. This game was just the whole package. Rollback netcode, good single player content, good resources to learn how to play. And the gameplay is just so good. Like, Killer Instinct has some of the best gameplay mechanics and development design and decisions ever done in any fighting game. It's just too good to be true. Like, the constant, two-way interaction in this game, it makes everything so intricate and interesting. Just, there is no reason to not give some love to this game. That in many ways, the Killer Instinct franchise could be some of the biggest today, but sadly we don't have a new KI, and Microsoft owns this IP now and is basically like on a cemetery. Like, they are not developing a KI game anytime soon. Hopefully they will, because these games are so good, but it seems like it's kind of dead. So, but this game deserves to be 8. Like, I don't want to hear a discussion for it. Like, this game is just, it's freaking epic. Then we move into number 7, and to me number 7 is for Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast. You know, Max and his friends put this game at 1, which is crazy, but I'm gonna give respect to Soul Calibur. Like, it's one of the biggest franchises in the history of fighting games. The impact that, you know, Soul Calibur had because of putting the game on the Dreamcast and not on our arcade, just like they say on their video, was very big. It basically changed the industry around fighting games and is what we do today. Like, today we play with consoles and PC, which is basically what this game did for the first time ever. So it deserves to be on the list. And Soul Calibur, you know, it's such a cool franchise. I hope that it gets back. After, you know, Soul Calibur 6, it seems like it's not going to come back, which is pretty sad. Hopefully it will. Because a Soul Calibur game, you know, well executed, can be some of the best fighting game you will ever play. So Soul Calibur for the Dreamcast gets number 7. Then we move into number 6, which for me is Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, a legendary game. I really don't know what to say to you. Like, this game is just too legendary to not be, you know, number 6 or even higher. Like, the only reason why I'm putting this at 6 is because I feel, you know, like other games are bigger in both cultural influence and finance influence and business. But this game, you could argue to even be 1, dude. Like, it's just a huge game, huge history, incredible roster, good mechanics, great movement, you know. There's so much good things about this game. It also had some pretty wacky stuff when it comes, you know, to the competitive scene. But what do we care about that? You know, the 1% of the people that play this game actually deal with that, so whatever. Just a legendary game, top 6 for me. And people are not gonna like this, but my number 5, in the top 5, it's Smash Brothers Ultimate. If we consider this type of games a fighting game, I will. Like, I'm not gonna be super, you know, crazy about, you know, being purist and saying that this is not a fighting game. Of course, it is not a traditional one, but it is a fighting game. The game revolves around fighting. This game is just too big to not be on the top 5. Like, it had incredible financial success, of course. It has arguably the best roster in the history of fighting games. If we consider this game a fighting game, like, this is the best roster ever. It's better than a Street Fighter, better than a Tekken game, better than the Mortal Kombat game. Like, this roster is just too good, okay? Also, the only thing that was bad about this game was the online, like the bad netcode. Everything else was so good. And the gameplay of this game is good in both casual and high level. So, like, this game had everything. The only problem was the wacky, you know, netcode. If this game had rollback, it could be top 3. I'm gonna say it right now. If this game had rollback, I would be playing it by now. So, Smash Ultimate, to me, gets the number 5 spot. Then we get into number 4, and to me, number 4 is Tekken 3. This is like the peak of Tekken in terms, you know, how much impact it had on both cultural terms, financial terms, commercial success. It was everything. Tekken 3 was everything for Bandai Namco and for us Tekken players. And to me, this game is too big to not put it here. Legendary. You could argue for Tekken 5, and I agree. Like, Tekken 5 could be a top 5 fighting game of all time. I'm not going to argue that. The reason why I'm putting Tekken 3 is because of what I said before. You know, I feel like it's bigger. It means more for Tekken as a franchise. Before Tekken 3, many people said, you know, Tekken is just Virtua Fighter, it's a rip-off. So, it deserves to be here. Now, my hot take is that Tekken 8 could become the best fighting game when it comes to the Tekken franchise. It could become the best Tekken, but it needs to have a good development cycle, and we need some years for that. So, let's actually get to number 3. And number 3 to me is, of course, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. This is basically, you know, the esports fighting game. It made fighting games big because of the, you know, competitive scene, and there is a lot of history for this game at EVO, and like, this game of course shaped modern fighting games, like in many ways. But people forget that Third Strike was a big problem for Capcom. Like, this game was not a success when it came out. It took years for it to do good, and it probably took too much time for the game to do good, actually. So, like, at the end of the day, Street Fighter 4 kind of saved the Street Fighter franchise and modern fighting games in many ways, but Third Strike had a bigger impact on the long run, and that is the reason why it's here. Some people would say that this game should be number 1. To me, that is not the case, because this game was not a success as people think. Like, this game was actually a problem for Capcom. But it deserves to be on the top 3? It does. It is simply a legendary game, and it shaped competitive fighting games. Now we get into number 2, and for me, this has to be Marvel vs. Capcom 2. As I've said before, tag games are a big part of the history of fighting games, and this game was just everything, dude. It was perfect. It was like the perfect balance between casual and competitive play. The roster was so good for the time, and until this day, to be honest, like, such a legendary game that carries so much impact in terms of culture for fighting games, also in financial terms for the developers. After, the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite big fiasco, we kind of need a game like Embassy 2 to make the franchise come back. If they develop like a remake of this game, with better graphics and stuff, it would be some of the biggest fighting games at the moment, at the present. If they made also a new Marvel vs. Capcom game, it would arguably be the biggest fighting game. So, like, there's just too much history and too much impact on this game to not be number 2. And for number 1, you guessed it, Street Fighter 2. To me, this is the biggest fighting game of all time. Basically, everything that we're playing today owes something to this game. There's just too much that this game did for us, for fighting games, for Street Fighter, and for all the other franchises. Like, it gave form to everything that we play today. If you think, of a mechanic or a concept or neutral, whatever you want to talk about, this game had some work on it. So to me, it deserves to be the first. The impact is so big, and not only that, but it is such a legendary game, such legendary characters, the World Warriors. Like, this is too big to not be number 1. You could argue some of the others, games on this list to be 1, and I wouldn't be that mad at it, but for me, on my own personal standpoint, this is the biggest fighting game of all time. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving this video a like and subscribe, and please comment, down below what you think. What is your top 10 list of fighting games for all time? I did mine based on my taste, but also, on impact. That is kind of like the thing that I was thinking about when doing this. Of course, thanks to Max for his content, his great videos, and for putting this, type of discussions out there. See you soon.